It was a brand new start to the Meyiwa murder trial today as proceedings started afresh, and retired Judge Rata Rakwatleng will be presiding over the case. And the state has laid out its case against the 5 accused who are facing charges relating to robbery and premeditated murder. Our senior reporter Silindelo Masikane is in studio, and she was in court again today. Good afternoon, and thank you for joining us.
Afternoon, Cindy.
Yeah, at least it got started. I mean,
yes.
Yesterday was a very brief appearance.
Yeah.
And what happened in court this afternoon?
Well, I think for much of what has transpired today, we can safely say that the trial is officially underway. This new trial, where 5 men are accused of the premeditated murder of Meyiwa, have pled. They all plead not guilty to the charges before them, and they have, in essence, been charged with premeditated murder, attempted murder, robbery with aggravated circumstances, possession of an illegal firearm, as well as possession of illegal ammunition. And so at this point, we're now seeing that the state has laid out its case in terms of how it wants to proceed with leading evidence. We officially have the first witness in the witness box, that is Zandi Khumalo, one of who was in the house on that fateful evening on the 26th of October 2014, and she has already begun giving her testimony in terms of what she recollects about what happened on that day. You know, she's already started telling us about how on that particular morning they were all at the home of Kelu Khumalo and Senzo Meyiwa in Melbourne. They proceeded to attend a performance together, and we understand that Senzo Meyiwa was due to actually go to a party of a friend later that evening before that fateful shooting. So what we understand from the state's case is that they're going to call a number of witnesses in order to prove their case against the 5 men in the dock, and they've actually told the courts in terms of how they're going to call each of these witnesses. Let's just take a listen to the state prosecutor, George Baloy, who outlines who we're going to see in the dock.
The state will assert that the provisions of the minimum sentence legislation, Section 51(1), and or Section 51(2) of Act 105 of 1997 are applicable, in that the murder was planned or premeditated as envisaged in the schedule, and or that the death of the deceased was caused by the accused in or after committing robbery with aggravating circumstances as envisaged in paragraph C of the schedule, Schedule 2 of Part 1 of Act 105 of 1997.
Senior reporter Silindelo Masikane is in studio to talk about what transpired in court. But what does the case, or rather the state, have again, in terms of the charges of the 5 accused?
So we're looking at 5 charges ranging from premeditated murder, like I said, to murder, as well as aggravated robbery, possession of an illegal firearm, as well as possession of illegal ammunition. And the state really telling the judge today that in essence, moving forward, we're going to see them leading evidence around the forensics, but they now, of course, have to start with those who were in the house, or are choosing to start with those in the house. In the initial trial, we actually saw the state first calling witnesses in terms of forensics. One of the 2 police officers was Sergeant Thabo Mosia, who was one of the first forensic officers on the scene, who took most of the, or should I say, some of the photographs from that crime scene. We also heard evidence from one of the first responders, the first police officers to arrive at that scene of the crime. But now with this new trial, we're seeing them obviously taking a different approach in terms of how they're leading their evidence. Perhaps they've been forced, in essence, to start with Zandi Khumalo, because in that first trial, she was the one who was currently under oath and giving testimony at the time. So they've now chosen to proceed with Zandi and then move on to other people who were in the house. Let's take a listen once more to State Prosecutor George Baloy.
The state will call witnesses who were in the house when Mr. Meyiwa was shot.
Ukuthi umbuso ke icala labo ke bazoletha kanjani ke enkantolo ukuthi ke umbuso uzobiza ke ofakazi ababekhona ke phakathi endlini la adutshulwa khona umufi,
as well as some neighbors,
kanye futhi ke nomakhelwane,
and they will give their evidence with the aid of the photo album of the scene where the incident occurred.
Bazonikeza ke ngobufakazi babo ke belekelelwa ke ialbum yezithombe ke yendawo leyo ke yesigameko noma yesehlakalo,
which have been handed in as exhibit C and D respectively.
Lelo album leyo ke exhibit C no D enkantolo,
in order to try and transport the court to the scene where the incident occurred. The state will call the two photographers later. And secondly, we will then lead ballistic evidence and related evidence, as well as the forensic field officers and police officers who attended the scene. We will then lead the evidence of a cell phone analyst who will do cell phone mapping, showing the cell phone contacts between the various role players.
Sizothi ke sibe sesibiza ke nofakazi ke bomuntu noma baloyo osebenza ke ngama cell phone la ezokuthi ke axhumanise noma ahlanganise khona ke ama cell phones walabo abambandakanyekayo.
We will also call private persons to whom certain utterances were made by some of the accused.
Now, Slee, we know that the current presiding judge has come out of retirement to take this case. What do we know about him?
Well, what we know, of course, is that, interestingly enough, he is a former football player. He actually used to play for Orlando Pirates FC back in the 60s. He's one of the founders of Kaizer Chiefs as well. But no, we also know that he's also got a very great record when it comes to the kinds of cases that he's presided over and the kinds of judgments that he's made. His reputation really precedes himself. It speaks for itself. And you can tell that the judiciary, I think, in this particular matter, really wants to see some kind of progress in terms of this matter. This is a trial, 8 to 9 years in the making. Already it took us about a year just to get 5 witnesses in the initial trial, just in the witness box. And you can already tell from what we saw yesterday and today that the judge is quite adamant that he doesn't want to see any more delays in this matter. In fact, in the previous trial, we used to end court proceedings at 3 p.m. But now that's also been moved for another 30 minutes. So we're now officially going to be ending at 3:30, just so we can try and cover as much ground as we can with the limited time or period that we have with this particular sitting. The trial will at this stage be sitting until around the 15th of September, until new dates that then can be confirmed between the counsel for the state as well as the defense. So we know that with Judge Rata Motlhokeng coming out of retirement, it means he's got all the time in the world to sit for this trial. There are no other matters that he's presiding over, and I think that's obviously a benefit in terms of trying to get as far as we can with this particular matter with the short space of time that we have. So let's just take a listen to some legal analysis with regards to the expectations of the judge, but also how his coming out of retirement actually benefits the trial, because he doesn't have any other matters before him. Let's take a listen.
It often happens that judges are called back to do commissions of inquiries. I mean, in some instances we've had, I think, spring to mind the Sariki inquiry, which was a retired judge. So often you would find that the judge president in a certain division would call upon previous judges who have retired to call upon them to come and assist. And now we know that at the best of times, there's always a shortage of judges. So if you can call upon a retired judge, a seasoned, experienced judge to take over proceedings, that would stand in good stead the whole way in which the matter will be dealt with. Instead of pulling in a judge who's an acting judge, who's just started, who's perhaps trying to feel his way, we have a judge that's done this 100 times. He knows the race and he knows what to do to get the matter to proceed. So I don't think there's anything untoward about it. I actually welcome the fact that we now have a dedicated judge who has come in to take over this matter, and it's a retired judge. So he's not really involved in other matters, so that's really good.
So in just wrapping, Slee, and thanks again for making the time. What happens tomorrow morning? Are we back in court? What time?
We're back in court tomorrow morning, 10 o'clock. Zandi Khumalo is still in the witness box. Her evidence is still being laid by the state. Perhaps by Thursday or Friday, we may see cross-examination by the defense, but we resume with Zandi Khumalo back in the witness box.
All right, much appreciated as always. That is eNCA senior reporter Silindelo Masikane, who will be in court and watching matters and proceedings very closely at the Senzo Meyiwa case.